Hey, Spirit, you ready for your close up?
Hello everyone and welcome to the Prince Magnum channel where hot rodding and romance do coexist. I'm your host Prince Magnum. Welcome to another edition of Do-It-Yourself Budget Hot Rodding, and in this episode, wow, a lot of you out there in the Maverick Nation have got a lot of questions about Project Spirit. So many questions that I just got to answer them. I got to answer as many of them as I possibly can in this episode. We're not talking just a couple of them. We're talking about a lot of them. So I'm basically taking the top ones that you guys have had for a long time now. And believe it or not, the top ones are still a long list. So we're going to try to get through this as quickly as possible. Now, if you've not kept up with the channel, if you're fairly new to the Prince Magnum channel and you're wondering who the heck Project Spirit is this car right here. That's right, folks. That's my 1975 Ford Maverick four-door sedan. Now, a lot of you have got a lot of questions in the Maverick Nation and in the general public right here in St. Francis County, and I actually had to sit down and take the top questions that you all have been asking me for a good while. So I got to give the people what they want, and that is answering those questions about Project Spirit. So without further ado, let's start off with the first question that I get typically asked anytime someone gets a look at Project Spirit. Number one, why a Maverick? Why not? Okay, why not a Maverick? I mean, when you go to a car show, typically the number one cars you're going to see there, you're going to see Corvettes, you're going to see Mustangs, you're going to see Dodge Chargers, you're going to see Challengers, you're going to see Camaros and Firebirds. You're going to see the occasional Buick LeSabre or Olds Cutlass. There's going to be a few of those cars like that. The one thing you don't always see a whole lot of is Mavericks. Now, I'm going to say right now, initially, we did not intend to do a Maverick. When it came time to look for the right project car for the Prince Magnum channel, Ford Maverick was not even on the radar. Believe it or not, what was on the radar is I was looking for some 70s Oldsmobile. Preferably something with an Olds 350 in it was what I was looking for. That's not what we found. We got lucky enough to find Project Spirit, and I sight unseen with just pictures, I fell in love with Project Spirit. Which brings us to question number two. Where did you find Project Spirit? We found Project Spirit sitting in Chaffee, Missouri. I actually know Project Spirit's backstory from when she was brand new all the way up to when we got her. And of course, she's been with the Prince Magnum channel for the last 4 years. So there's tons of video to keep up with what has happened with Project Spirit in the last 4 years. So let me say right now, how we found her. There was an ad on Craigslist, and I found Project Spirit and looked at it, and I was pretty happy with the price. Thought it was a little overpriced. The guy wanted $1,200, and while I was at work, Princess Faye actually called the guy who was selling Project Spirit, and it was one of the members of her original family, which I'll have to tell that whole story all over again. But Princess Faye talked him down to $1,000, and she actually fronted the cash. She fronted the cash to buy Project Spirit. She'd had some money from her student loans while she was going to the beauty academy, and she then basically gave me the money, and I purchased Project Spirit. But in essence, Princess Faye actually bought Project Spirit for us. The guy who was selling her, if we had not bought her, he was going to give it about another couple of weeks, and he was already talking that if we didn't buy her in 2 weeks, 2 weeks later, if we had not bought her, she was going to the crusher. So quite literally, we snatched Project Spirit from the jaws of the crusher, if you will. So there's that little tidbit. Question number 3. Why a 4-door Maverick? Why not? Okay, let me explain right now. I love the 2-door classics. I do love the 2-door classics. I've had several of them. I had a 1971 Nova 2-door. Obviously, if you kept up with the channel, my second car was a '78 Camaro. There is no such thing as a 4-door, a 4-door Camaro. So there's that. I've had a Buick Regal, a 1983 Buick Regal, a 1987 Olds Cutlass Supreme. Amazing cars, and all of them were 2-doors. But being a father, okay, and I have 5 children, it has always made, I always knew that at some point in time I was going to be a parent. So I kind of grew accustomed to getting classic cars or old cars in general that were 4-door. Usually because they've not had a whole lot done to them. So you're talking about there's not a whole lot in the way of someone else's bad stuff that they did to the car. There's going to be stuff that's going to need to be repaired, obviously. Things that are going to need to be restored and replaced and things like that. That's typical when you're talking old cars. But there's not going to be a whole lot of where someone has done something to the car that they shouldn't have done, and it's just going to piss me off. So there's not going to be a whole lot of that. So you're literally getting untouched steel, and it's basically a clean slate. That's one of the reasons why I love the 4-doors. And for the record, I will be the first to say that more than anything, I love station wagons just because they're family cars. No one really looks at them. You can buy them cheap. There's not a whole lot that's been done to them, and they're a clean slate. So because of that, I love 4-doors, and the bigger they are, the more I love them. And I love station wagons more than anything. And technically speaking, Project Spirit doesn't actually fit the criteria of classic cars that I enjoy. But she is a 4-door, which is perfect for family. She's the hot rod I never have to give up. So there's question number 3. Question number 4. How hard is it to find parts for Project Spirit? Well, it depends. It depends on what you're talking about. Obviously, a lot of engine parts are fairly easy to get your hands on because a lot of those parts will interchange with like the 306s. A lot of those Ford inline 6 parts will interchange with each other. Not all of them, but a lot of them will. And because a lot of those parts will interchange with each other, a lot of auto parts places around where I live still keep that stuff on the shelf. So it's really easy to get that sort of stuff. Very easy. I mean, it's just unbelievable how easy it is to get. Now, when you start getting into the chassis and body parts, that's where it becomes a little difficult. A lot of times you got to know what will interchange with what. Like when we did the Z-bar linkage, the clutch ball. When the clutch ball on Project Spirit finally failed, and usually those don't last very long. It has something to do with the way the engine torques and everything, and it just snaps them off. And the other problem is that Ford is notorious for putting kind of making a lot of the ball out of nylon. So those will wear out pretty easy. So after a certain period of time, it'll snap, and it's hard to get that part. As a matter of fact, you go into a lot of auto parts places, and they don't even carry that part. I had to go through a company called Eckler's, and I had to get a clutch ball for a 1970 Ford Falcon, which is almost identical. And what had to be done is a couple of washers had to be put into place to space it out where it's just right. Otherwise, it wouldn't work. So when you're talking about parts like that, you got to know what it'll interchange, and then you got to sometimes know how to modify it. That's exactly what we did with the front disc brake conversion. You cannot get spindles for any car. It's considered a non-wear item, and because it's a non-wear item, parts, they don't make extras, so you have to go to junkyards. And that's where I ran into the stupid comment that a lot of people would make. Well, just go get one from a junkyard for a Ford Granada. When's the last time you seen a Ford Granada, you dipshit? So it became very frustrating in that regard. There are companies out there that do make the reproduction parts, but it just made sense to go to a system that was beefier and would stop Project Spirit with no effort whatsoever. And the system we got on there is designed to slow down the 429 Cobra Jet. Notice what I said, slow down. You're not. That is just a very powerful engine, and the brake systems at the time just could not stop that engine. But with Project Spirit's inline 6, it's not a problem whatsoever. So it just kind of depends on the part, and a lot of times you could be waiting anywhere from a couple of days all the way up to 2-3 weeks waiting for a part to come in. So it is kind of a hassle, but you can still get parts for the Maverick. Now there is one part that you cannot get, and that is the four-door windows. The windows that go into Project Spirit stores, you cannot get those. Those have to be specially ordered, and they have to be cut. That's just the way it is. Again, we're talking about almost a one-of-a-kind car nowadays. When's the last, let alone when's the last time you've seen a Ford Maverick? But on top of that, even more so, when's the last time you've seen a four-door Maverick? So there's that little issue. That's the only part that I've not been able to find anywhere, and it would almost have to be, measurements would have to be taken, and that part would have to be specially cut. So there's that little bit of tidbit information. Number five on my list. Will we ever do a V8 swap to Project Spirit? And the answer is yes. Yes, we will. Project Spirit's original inline 6 is still there. 45 years later, all the miles, and even through all the breakdowns and everything, and even with the fact that she sat for 20 plus years, I'm thinking it was around 20 years, she sat in a barn. And let me say right now, it is harder for an engine to sit than it is to run. That's harder on a car, period, to just sit. So the fact that she's still going after 45 years, and even though she sat for that long, her engine should have been locked up, but it wasn't. The original family did disassemble that engine, but they put it back together just as it was. They did not change anything internally, so that's all original parts on the inside. That being said, we're coming up on 300,000 miles. And as we're coming up on 300,000 miles, she's starting to leak a little bit more oil, which we're doing everything we can to keep that oil leak to a minimum, but that's just one of those things. In the 1970s, that was a commonplace issue with all of the cars, all of them. That's just the way it is. But with today, we could rebuild Project Spirit's original inline 6. Weather changing, my nose is running. We could do a rebuild on Project Spirit's original inline 6. The problem is that you would have to buy every part a la carte to replace. We're talking the main bearings, the cam bearings, and even the camshaft. We would have to buy every part for the rebuild internally, individually. That will not do. Because when you start talking about it like that, it starts getting really expensive. Even in today's money, a basic engine rebuild should not exceed $4,000 to $5,000. By doing it that way, the prices really jump up. So we could be, an engine build that could normally take about $4,000 to $5,000. With Project Spirit's original inline 6, it could cost anywhere from $6,000 to $7,000. And the only reason why we were looking at this is, number one, it is starting to get harder and harder to get the parts. And on top of that, as sad as this sounds, she really does deserve the V8. And I hate to give up that inline 6, but it is getting harder to find the parts. And on top of that, I'll be honest with you. I mean, I've had my fun with the inline six, but that engine's not going to last forever. It's just one of the natures of the beast. Her engine will never not last forever. So we are going to look at doing a V8 swap, and that's mainly because it's just going to be cheaper in the long run now. And on top of that, by doing the engine swap, the parts that I'll be able to get will be a lot easier to get my hands on than it would be to just, you know, to try to rebuild her inline six. It'll be a whole lot harder to do that. All right, so that brings us to number six. Number six. Will Project Spirit get a 302 when we do the engine swap? And the answer is, it depends. I will say right now, I have nothing against the 302. I've had a 302 before. As a matter of fact, I had a 1983 Mercury Grand Marquis Colony Park station wagon. And that's a mouthful. And it came with a fuel-injected 302, the same type they were putting in the Mustangs that year. This car was very weird because it also had the Police Interceptor suspension underneath it. I'd never seen anything like it. As a matter of fact, if I went to go get a lot of suspension parts for that car, I had to go directly through the dealership, Sam Sism dealer, you know, the Sam Sism Ford dealership, just outside of Farmington, right in between Farmington and Park Hills on Highway 67. I had to actually go directly through a Ford dealership for those parts. And believe it or not, I really did like that 302. However, that's very typical nowadays. A lot of people end up building the same 302 for their projects, and I don't want to do that. I don't want to build the same engine. So what engine am I looking at? Well, believe it or not, even though Ford discontinued here in the United States the 289 in 1967, that was the last year for the 289. From 68 onward, it was the 302, and of course we know about the 351 Windsor, which is basically just the same engine, just slightly taller, if you will. The Mavericks still got the 289 from 1970 to 1975. So in other countries, so in like Mexico and in Brazil and Venezuela, you could have gotten a Maverick brand new from 1970 to 1975 with a 289. And because of that, I would kind of like to get my hands on a 289 and kind of do that build. On top of that, it would not only that, but the first time I ever heard a performance engine ever fire up was when I was a kid. And we're talking, I wasn't even in kindergarten yet, and it was my dad's 1966 Ford Mustang GT Coupe, not the fastback. When I heard that 289 fire up for the first time and roar through those glass pack, exhaust mufflers, I was in love with, with hot rods of any size and shape, and that's where that began. So to me, it would kind of be a lot of, kind of that nostalgia to have a 289 in there, that and to kind of show a little bit of homage to what the Mavericks were getting outside of the United States, because a lot of times we tend to forget the Maverick is very popular still to this day in Mexico and in Brazil and Venezuela. They keep those things on the road forever. And as a matter of fact, if I was to take Project Spirit into one of those countries, she would actually blend in with the surroundings. They're still everywhere in Central America and in South America. So because of that, Project Spirit, we're looking at trying to find a 289, but if I get a sweet deal on a 302, obviously I'm going to go that route. And if I was to find a sweet deal on a 351 Windsor, that would definitely be an option. So any one of the Windsor class engines, but my first choice would be a 289. So that brings us to number seven. Number seven, will Project Spirit stay a manual car? And the answer to that is no. Princess Faye, I would love for Princess Faye to be able to drive Project Spirit a little bit more. And she can drive manual. She drives manual actually very well. When tootling around town, she actually drives manual better than me. And I've been doing it for years. But here's the thing. She doesn't like to drive manual. And there are times when we really need to take, we're actually, as I'm making this video, we kind of need to take Project Lena off the road a little bit, to limit her mileage a little bit more, because she needs some TLC. But Princess Faye doesn't always feel super comfortable driving stick. And with the new clutch setup, when she goes to push it down, you have to take it all the way to the floor with that, with that new clutch, because we're still breaking it in. And she's 5 foot, and you can't move the seat any closer because of the stick shift on the floor. So we had to take this into consideration. So this is one of the reasons why here in the future we're going to be looking at doing probably a C4 automatic. And of course it'll get like a B&M shift improvement kit, and and of course we're going to keep her Hurst equipped. We're going to definitely go with a Hurst automatic shifter on the top of it. But as much as I would love to keep her a manual car, it's just not in the cards, because I want Princess Faye to be able to enjoy Project Spirit too. And bear in mind, Project Spirit is a daily driven car, so it just makes sense to make her a little bit more user friendly for Princess Faye too. But for the record, I always wanted a stick shift car. It's just that previous relationships did not allow me to have that ultimate car. What I always wanted. I always wanted a stick shift car, and I got it. But because and for the record, Princess Faye would like me to keep her stick as long as possible, but it's just not in the cards. And on top of that, it's getting really hard to find parts for that 3-speed manual. So we're back to, sometimes it's hard to get parts for them. All right. That brings us to number 7. Number 7, is Project Spirit good on gas? And the answer is yes. Yes, she is. We did discover gas mileage in the 1970s. You just had to coax it out. But along with that, the compression ratios had really dropped dramatically in the 70s. I don't know where people get this idea that they were all bad on gas. That's not true. The bigger V8s were, if you had a big full-size car that had a big beefy V8, yes, in the 70s it was horrible on gas. One of the guys I'm good friends with from the Foothills Car Club, he's got a 1975 Lincoln Continental Mark IV that's got a 460 in it. That thing can pass anything but a gas station. That's a big monstrous engine trying to move that big luxury car from the 70s. So yes, it's bad on gas. But when you get down to like your Chevy small blocks, if you know what you're doing, even from the factory, if you know what you're doing about keeping it maintained, even in stock form. The best example I can give, I had a 1977 Olds Delta, and I've done videos about this car, numerous videos about it. Old Gold. Old Gold was a 77 Oldsmobile Delta 88. This car was so big, all it lacked was a sail. And under the hood was a Chevy 350 and a 350 turbo automatic. And it was at that time that they were starting to dick around with the metric transmissions. So that was a weak transmission. Eventually I put a better transmission in there, and it was a 350 turbo with a B&M shift improvement kit, and it shifted hard, it was crisp every time. That car, when I got it, averaged 22 miles to the gallon on the highway. That is a little bit better than what you'll get today. The best you're going to get today is 18. That's still not that bad. And the performance was there. Top speed was 145 in that big old boat. So even with the low compression, the V8s and even the 6-cylinders had a tremendous amount of power. Now, when you start making the modifications around that stock engine, they could keep up with cars in the 1960s, the muscle car era, just fine. Okay? So that is an erroneous thing. The gas mileage was there because they lowered the compression and they made improvements with the ignition system. They made improvements inside the carburetor. And I've got an example right over there of a carburetor from the 1960s, and it looks like it belongs on a tractor. Internally, it's even worse. It looks like something that off of a tractor. I'm not kidding you. And that was the performance that we were getting in the 1960s. But these things were horrible, and when the EPA stepped in and made those changes, the gas mileage got better. It just didn't look like it because of the emissions control equipment at the time. So yes, Project Spirit gets good gas mileage. She averages 40 miles to the gallon on the highway. Now that goes to crap if I'm driving stupid, and as much as I know you all enjoy Project Spirit sliding around corners and everything, we don't do that all the time because she's meant for driving every day. And if I want to lose that gas mileage, start sliding around corners and hot footing it all the time. The gas mileage goes to crap after that. So if you're hanging your leg in it, no, the gas mileage is not there. But if you're driving her respectfully and her normal preferred speed, depending on the weather outside, depending on the humidity, and depending on when the last time I did a tune-up, she kind of likes that area in between 55 and 65 miles an hour. Now, on a really good day, if she's feeling it, she'll get up to about, she can cruise easy at 75, 80 miles an hour. But I don't like to get her that fast because there again, even though she's doing that, it's one of those things that I'll be using more gas. So I try to keep her no faster than 70 miles an hour. So that's just one of those things. Can she do it? Yes, she can. So, but yeah, that's one of those things. I mean, she is good on gas on a really good clear day. And I mean, we're talking, she has to have a fresh tune-up, a fresh oil change, and if the weather's decent and the traffic on the highway is pretty minimal, she can get all the way up to 64. But the conditions have to almost be perfect, like the stars got to be perfectly aligned. But she averages 40 on the highway. And that's actually better than a lot of the four-cylinders of today. All right? So there you have that. Number nine. How many miles does Project Spirit have on her? Well, the last I looked, and I know we're getting really close to where she's only got about 17,000 miles to go before she turns the odometer over for the third time in her life. That's 300,000 miles. That's like unheard of with a car nowadays. Most vehicles today, when they get up around 250,000, the engines are usually going to, are going belly up. Project Spirit's still going. So that's pretty impressive. Now the inline sixes, I will say, Project Spirit is by no stretch of the imagination the exception to the rule. Ford inline sixes, I know of some places around here, there's some of them, Ford inlines that are on farms that are getting close to that 1 million mile marker. It's not uncommon with the Ford inline sixes. And that being said, we're going to be doing a video later on really diving into why that is possible. But for right now, the main thing that you need to know is gravity is on Project Spirit's engine side. That's why she's lasted so long. All right. That brings us to number 10. When you redo Project Spirit's body, what color is she going to be? Blue. What shade of blue? I don't know. But I will also say that, well, before I get into that, we're looking at some sort of blue. We're going to be doing kind of probably some sort of metallic blue and probably either kind of a light blue pinstriping to kind of keep some of that originality from the Ford light blue still there. Or we might be going over to silver altogether, kind of a silver pinstriping of some sort. We could even do white. White would be okay. But I want to try to keep her blue. I don't want to keep the Ford light blue because there was, for those that do not know, kind of a little side note, Project Spirit's Ford light blue, everybody used to make fun of back in the day. If you had a four-door car that was painted that shade of blue, and this was all the car companies, that was considered grandma's car. Now, the irony of it is her original owner was a little old grandma. So that's the irony of that. But even though a lot of you really love the color on her, I can't get over that whole joke because I'm old school. So because of that, Project Spirit will not be staying Ford light blue. She'll probably be going to either a metallic blue. But there is debate right now. If I can get in touch with the right people at the Ford home office in Dearborn, there may be talk about possibly getting Project Spirit reshot in Mistachrome. If you don't know what Mistachrome is, it was the paint that came out on the Mustang Cobras in the 90s. So there is debate on that, but I don't know if that'll be a thing. It is a possibility. It's always a possibility, but it would depend on what Ford would have to say about it because they're pretty tight about that. But more than likely, she'll get shot with some sort of kind of dark blue metallic. With some sort of either light blue, silver, or white pinstriping of some sort. And I know Princess Faye will be doing that. Okay. That's a good, that's a good question. Real good question. Number 11, are you guys really going to keep the bench seat? And the answer is yes, we're keeping that bench seat. I know a lot of you out there in the hot rod community think that you have to do hot rods a certain way, and that is not the case. Just like we've been doing, having fun with the inline 6 and the 3-speed manual, there was a lot of guys that did that back in the day. You didn't have to have the V8. So with the bench seat, Princess Faye can scoot next to me. We just did that video, and a lot of you have been watching it, and I know you've been enjoying it. We really are going to keep that bench seat. I don't know why there's so many people that have such a hard time with the thought of the bench seat. And let me explain. The bench seat is designed so you could put one of your kids in between you. Project Spirit's a product of her time. There used to be a time when you could put one of your kids in between you, did not have to be in a booster seat, and did not have to be in a car seat when they got to a certain age. So why, she was always meant to be a family car, and yes, even though my kids aren't here, that doesn't mean that they can't be. And if that's the case, if one of my kids who doesn't have to be in a booster seat wants to sit up front in between Princess Faye and I, they can. I don't see, to me, that is just common sense. And I have some fond memories of riding around in the middle of, say, my grandparents or my mom and dad when I was a kid on a bench seat. And again, even though my kids aren't here right now because, reasons that we'll get into in another video and doesn't belong on Do-It-Yourself Budget Hot Rodding, if my kids are here and they want the same memories, they can have them too. That's just, to me, that makes sense. I was introduced to hot rodding by my dad, and it was bench seats that I was introduced on. So it just makes sense to me to do the same thing. Let's see what the malfunction is. All right, number 12. And I love this one. Is Project Spirit going to be in any car shows in 2020? And the answer is a big, giant yes. Yes. When you guys see that stock footage, here, I'll just put it up. When you all see that footage, that really is Project Spirit's trophies from a total of 4 years. She's been in a total of 9 car shows, and has brought home a total of 5 trophies. That being said, she's also been to a couple of car meets, and if there was any, car show that would be my all-time favorites, the one that we did for the 4th of July in Jackson, Missouri, even though Project Spirit didn't trophy, I just came away with an amazing story on her, and we'll tell the story again in an upcoming video. I'll tell some of my favorite stories, but that's definitely one of my all-time favorite stories about Project Spirit in the 4 years that we've had her on the channel. But yes, definitely we want to do more car shows, and of course I want Project Spirit to have more trophies, because I mean the hope is one day that instead of having a shot of just 5 trophies on her hood, I'm putting them all over her, because she deserves it. She's an amazing car, one of a kind anymore this day and age, when a lot of people still turn their nose up at the four-door classics and antiques. We're doing something different, and it's nice to be able to do something different. And number 13, the bonus, I guess you could say, on this one, and I know a lot of you are not going to be happy when I say this, but is the record run back on? Because we were shooting for August the 7th. my 40th birthday, but we had to put it on hold. Is the run back on? And the answer is yes. Yes. The run is back on. Project Spirit is going to get her shot at breaking that record that I set so many years ago. Now, I know some people in the Ironton area have talked about trying to break it and set it higher because they want younger people to. And I'm telling you right now, whoever tries it, you better be experienced. And I don't recommend you doing it. And a lot of people don't want me to do it. As a matter of fact, my buddy Third Gen 83, Third Gen keeps telling me, man, I don't think you should do this run. You know, not just so much because I don't want anything to happen to you, but you know, Project Spirit is kind of irreplaceable at this point. And he's absolutely right. But I have full confidence that Spirit could do it with no questions asked. So that being said, it just makes, you know, I mean, this is going to be a one-off exhibition, more or less. I want to do this. I want to, you know, kind of recapture some of that. Pretty much when that's done, I mean, I've pretty well done everything that I really could ever ask for when it comes to, you know, getting stupid. And at my age, I mean, I really can't, you know, I got to start thinking about slowing down at least a little bit. But you got to remember, I mean, you know, a lot of people my age where I live, a lot of us have passed away that are my age from my high school. And I want to remind them that we're not too old to get out there and do what we did when we were younger. And we're going to be kicking it back up, trying to raise money for the Extra Life organization when we go to do this. So there is a good cause behind it. There's several good causes behind it. And, you know, trying to recapture a little bit of my youth. That's what a lot of it is focused on, trying to recapture just a little bit of that youth for myself. So it just makes sense to me to get out there and mix it up one more time and try that run one more time. And I know what record I got, you know, I know the speed I got to break. If we don't succeed that day, at least I gave it an attempt. And to me, that's not failure, okay? Some of you millennials need to learn that, okay? Just because you tried doesn't mean you failed. All right. So that's it. That is all of the questions a lot of you have been asking me for a good long time now. If you've got any other questions about Project Spirit, leave them in the comments box below. Again, for those that do not know, I'm going to repeat this again. Princess Faye did buy Project Spirit for me. So if any of you ladies out there ever wonder, you know, with all the sweet stuff that I do for Princess Faye here on, you know, in Surviving Romance, does she do anything for me? She bought me Project Spirit, okay? So, let me say right now, when I say that I have the most wonderful wife in the world, that's not a joke. All right, so that brings us to a good stopping point. As always, I love to give shout-outs in my videos, and I try to give as many shout-outs as I possibly can. Be sure to, the people I'm about to post right here, gosh, dang, that is a lot of people that support the Prince Magnum channel. Wow, that's impressive. That's a lot of you out there that get behind this channel and want to see the romance content. You want to see the hot rodding and how it all goes together, and you want to see the stuff on sobriety, and you want to see the stuff on retro games. I mean, that is impressive. A lot of you out there really have got a lot of wonderful support, and you really put me over. And as you have been doing so, as of this morning, when I looked at you know, where I was at on supporters, 920. We are close to that 1,000 goal marker, and it's almost the end of December. I've been shooting for 1,000. We're going to get pretty doggone close, I believe. And the folks that I just posted, they're the ones that have really been doing their best to really put the Prince Magnum channel over and try to get our name out there. So a lot of you, you know, thank you guys so much. Wow, that's impressive. All right. And that brings us to a good point where I want to say, as always, get out there and work on a project. I don't care what it is. Just do something with yourself. Remember, idle hands and a creative mind, they don't go well together. They go together like oil and water, okay? You know, if you've got, you know, if you will, I should almost say, if you can dream it, you could probably build it. So get out there and do something with yourself. You know, don't live that pipe dream. Make your dreams come true. If you want a car like Project Spirit, get out there and build it. If you have a sweetheart, sweep them off their feet. Do something special for them today, you know? If you got a classic car, take them for a ride. Shoot, if you got any car, take them for a ride. Do something special. Take them cruising. Take them out on a date. They deserve it. They put up with us, guys. You with me? And, as always, all of you out there, if no one out there has told any of you that they love you today, Prince Magnum does. God bless you, and have a happy 24. Thank you.